Hello, and welcome to Monday's Q&A. So, a few people online, a couple of questions coming in, which is great. Exciting times to this week. We are off to Free Fest, so you can see boxes of kit being packed behind me. We're looking. What? Did I put that guitar up there? We're looking good for Free Fest. We've sold out because we're only allowed 30 people. COVID laws. But it's going to be a good time. Now, one of the things that we do at Free Fest is we hunt for new dive sites. So Nico has asked me how to search for good freediving spots. And literally, that's what we do quite often. We spend a lot of our time looking for good freedive spots. So, it's a really good question. So let's kind of delve a little bit more into that. What makes a good freedive spot is your first question. So, you've got to set your sights on something, else you will always fail. So if you just presume that a good freedive spot is 70 meters deep, crystal clear water, so you can stick a rope down and swim up and down the rope, well, from my point of view, you're wasting your time in freediving, or not wasting your time. You've just got the wrong kind of end of the stick. I have heard of people doing liverboards in Egypt, and they go to a beautiful location, put a rope in, dive up and down a rope. Go to another beautiful location, put a rope in, dive up and down a rope. And it just doesn't make sense to me. Okay, people can do it. They're happy doing it. That's absolutely fine. Let me turn the light. It's getting a bit dark. Oh, it's been such a sunny day all day. So that's up to them. For us, it's not what it's about. So what makes a good freedive spot? Now, if you, for instance, when we first went up Mount Snowdon and dived the lakes at the top of Mount Snowdon, we weren't expecting earth-shatteringly good visibility or depth, although I had looked at a few maps and kind of got the idea that it was 30 plus meters. So we knew it wasn't just going to be 2 meters deep. But the adventure of climbing up a mountain to free dive at the top of a mountain was the point. So we knew we'd found a good free dive spot even before we got there, because we had to climb up a mountain, and one of the most popular mountains in the UK. In fact, if not the most popular mountain. And there's just a string of people going up, and there's us free diving in the middle of a lake. And we found a boot, some rocks, but trying to find the deep spots and kind of get in. And there was a sheep swimming with us at one point. And then we found the Fairy Grotto, which is just off next to it. That was a tiny little waterfall, beautiful little waterfall. Maybe it's almost fully enclosed. So 360 degree like hole in the ground, maybe 3-4 foot across, with a beautiful waterfall. And somebody somehow, me, realised that there might be a little hole, so we kind of went in and explored this hole that kind of went off for about 6 foot. And then somebody else found a hole underneath that was a cavern, and just I mean, this is a little pond next to a pond. So, and it just having fun. So we knew that was going to be a good dive site, and it was up in the hills. But if we're on the yacht trip, we will be looking for dive sites all the time. I'll just be sitting on the back of the yacht with a pair of binoculars looking for dive sites. And we're looking for something completely different there. We're looking for, they've got a volcanic rock and limestone there, so you're looking for different types of rock. But you're looking for a fault line, which will probably end up as a cave. And some of the caves we found on Kefalonia are huge. With the cave you must never go in, for instance, it's maybe I don't know, a foot half or maximum half a meter or something like that, to go in. And then when you go in, it opens up into a massive chamber with seals in it, which is why you should never go in there. We do cave cleanups in there. So you're looking for a very specific kind of formation that you know that there's going to be a cave, and equally well, hopefully it kind of goes down and isn't just a meter deep, shallow. So that's what you're looking for. So set your sights. So if you're in the Alps, for instance, so Nico was asking, in the mountains, going to the Alps soon, have no idea where to start finding a good spot. Well, it's pretty simple to start with. So are you going with free divers, or are you just going on a hike and taking your fins? Set your sights. It's pretty simple, and then you start looking for water. So that's it. If you're quite high up, the probability of the water being clear is going to be quite high, because you haven't got so much soil, you haven't got any detritus of trees, etc., to fall into it. So it should be quite clear. But what do you want to do when you're up there? If you're just going to explore and put your face in the water, then anywhere is going to be kind of fun to do that. You can look at the maps, see roughly how deep the lakes are. Some of them have got, you can look, and you're looking for, if the edges of the lake are like really like this, then it's probably not going to be very deep. But if you've got a sheer rock face dropping into the edge of the lake, then you've got a good chance that it's going to go down a little way. And you don't need it to be deep, super deep, but as I say, you don't want it to be like a meter or 2 meters. You want it to be worthwhile doing a duck dive without banging your head. Which reminds me of a fantastic story. We were up in Scotland, and there was following this river, crystal clear, beautiful river, and there was a kind of pool where the waterfall was falling in, and it looked deep. It was so clear. It looked so deep. So let's get in. Let's do it. Why not? So we kitted up, and I jumped in, and it was deep for a river that we were just playing in. It was deep, so maybe 2-3 meters, but there was a little undercut, so I could go down. I kind of went in and kind of, oh, that's cool. Oh, there's an undercut. Came up and went, oh, I think it goes. So 3 counter blows, deep breath, proper duck dive, even though it was only 3 meters. Proper duck dive, and went down and just hid in this little chamber and just kind of wedged myself in there and just kind of went to sleep. And Andy, who was with us, he duck dived down as well to see where I was going, and obviously I saw him. I just grabbed him and just pulled him in, and we just sat there. And we were there. It was a good hold, because we were ready for a good hold, because we both thought, I knew I was going to do it, and he thought it was deep. And then, when we were ready, we kind of popped out and popped. Whoa, that's incredible, that's brilliant. And Kiri on the side was like, oh, quick, get your kit on. Freya, get your kit on, let's go, it's really deep. And, her disappointment when it was only 3 meters deep. Yeah, she nearly beat me to a pulp. Anyway, that's beside the point. That's just a story. So that's how to find a good spot. You want to find, obviously, water, set your sights, and a nice sheer kind of steep angle going into it probably means there's going to be something underneath. Try and avoid lakes that have got a lot of tourists there or visitors, because if people are fishing there, fishing lines are going to be a big issue, which is always an issue. But if you're just up there for a walk, you don't want to be kind of messing with that sort of kind of thing. We never want to be messing with that sort of thing. But yeah, set your sights, go dive. I hope that answers your question. I mean, literally, we're going to Free Fest next week, and I will spend hours and hours looking over maps. Now, Free Fest is something different, because we've got, as I've already said tonight, we've got 30 people going. So I will be looking for somewhere there's a car park, somewhere that's off the beaten track, and the car park just has to be kind of close, and a lay-by or something, depending on how many cars we've got. And it doesn't have to be super close. A nice walk, and Google Maps is beautiful to help you see if there's actually a possibility of getting down to some of these coves that are hard to get to, and you're looking for rocks. In Cornwall, you've got beautiful sandy beaches, but they're going to go off and they're never going to get deep at all. So you're looking for nice rocks, rock formations, so off the beaten track. And that's kind of what I'm looking for. And I'll spend hours and hours and hours just poring over the maps, keep checking, see if there's anywhere close, see if there's any pictures, see if anybody's been there. And that's kind of what we do. So hopefully that answers your question. Darren asks, when should you use a snorkel and when not? Yeah, that's a simple one. When you go snorkeling, use a snorkel. Next. So if you're in Egypt and you're going out for a swim and just want to see fish, stick a snorkel in. Okay? You're going to look down, you're going to see fish. In Raisbury, there's no point in having a snorkel because as what Darren clearly knows these things, but putting that question out there to kind of get the answer, which is fine. But he knows if you have a snorkel in, as soon as you put your face underwater with a snorkel, you're not part of the group, which is fine if you're not part of a group. If you're doing a competition, etc., you put a snorkel in, your face underwater, you're not in part of the group. And it's very hard to communicate with somebody who's kind of disappeared. So when we go diving, we're 95% of the time in a group, having fun, talking, teaching even. And you see people teaching on a buoy, they're like teaching, and the students, they're learning, they've got a snorkel, they haven't got it in their mouth because they're talking. And then their snorkel's flapping around, and then they do their dive and the snorkel's flapping around. It just doesn't make any sense at all. Just doesn't make any sense at all. Some people say that laying face down and breathe up is more relaxing. It could be. I mean, I personally think breathing in all the CO2 you just breathed out negates having one. But if you are needing that extra bit of relaxation, rather than just laying on your back or because I'm leg heavy, just hanging on a rope, if you really are trying to eke out that extra little bit of performance, then you're not diving just for fun with your mates. So that's the switch over. So we say if you're snorkeling, you go out, you'll see fish. You want to put a snorkel in, you can look down, you can see fish. That's fine. If you're with somebody else, not having a snorkel means you've got to lift your head to breathe, and you are automatically doing 5 in and 10 out, because you'll put your face underwater, blow bubbles as you're watching your buddy for 10, and then you lift your head up, put your face under, breathing out for 10. So you're automatically doing 5, 10. So it's a lot safer to not use a snorkel when you're kind of playing with a buddy. Okay. So Willsby 1 to 3. When did you start to learn to freedive? Well, weirdly enough, I covered that last week. It was 1998, and I was traveling through Israel. And going down to Egypt, and we did some snorkeling in Dahab, which was back then just didn't exist. It was just a Bedouin camp. So we just kind of stopped there, had a lovely time, went to Sharm, and we'd saved up enough money to do a week's scuba. I didn't see nearly as many fish. Just the whole thing was really hectic. So we went back to Dahab, and I did some more snorkeling. And then when I came back, somebody said, or when I was there, I think somebody said, "Oh wow, are you a freediver?" I had never heard the term, so I looked it up, and that's kind of where I started. And pretty much quit scuba pretty much straight away, purely because I didn't have time to do both, and I was doing a lot of freediving. I remember the Tunnel of Death at Raisbury. It took me something like 3 or 4 months to get through it, because nobody had done it before. It wasn't, nobody was there. Nobody was doing freediving at all. I was kind of there. And my wife at the time was there. She was scuba safety for me, and I kind of building up the courage to do the tube. There you go. Anyway, so hopefully that answers your question. Diane, can you swim / freedive in any lake in the UK? Good question. No. Next. So if they're privately owned, private land, you are subject to trespassing, but we go by the same rules as wild swimming, which is most lakes you can swim in, and most lakes, if you just do it quietly and just get on with it, nobody cares. And for us to go free diving, we kind of want to do it where nobody else is anyway. Swimming, you can do it in you can kind of do it in places that with other people and kind of and then it kind of gets a little bit, you could get told off, you could get chucked out, you could get not necessarily prosecuted, but that's kind of not really what a place we would want to free dive. So we're kind of going to be in places that nobody's really kind of worried about. So they're off the beaten track. I believe that you have the right to swim in any lake that's not private property. Having said that, there's been a couple of lakes we've dived in which we found out after we dived there that we shouldn't have dived there, which was quite interesting. There's a blue lake in Wales that we dived, and it's really weird. Sapphire Lake, they called it. Oh, beautiful. And then you found out afterwards why it was beautiful, and it was because it was full of poisonous chemicals. But that's beside the point. So, same rules as wild swimming. And that's so you can look them up and go with that. Okay, so Dusan, hi Marcus. I have a question about equipment. My carbon fin has a crack at the point where it is screwed to. Struth. Okay, that's a good question. In theory, yes, you can repair it. Okay, so carbon fibre is made up of two things. You have the mats of carbon strands that are interlaced, which is the bit you kind of see and you would recognise as carbon fibre. And now fibres of carbon that are weaved into a mat, and the different ways that they weave them give it different properties. Okay, so that's it. But then they're held together with plastic, essentially. They're pressed in there, and that's kind of holds it together. So that's how they're made. Okay. In theory, if they were made, then somebody can kind of fix it. Whether it would, you can cut back and replace it. The carbon fibers itself are not going to be broken. Well, maybe they will. It depends how far it goes in. But you can cut it back. You can patch it. You can, or not you can. Somebody else can. They can kind of get into the actual construction of the carbon fiber and replace bits. Whether it's worth doing, different question. Whether it's going to be strong depends on who's doing it. It's very unusual for it to break there. If you've got, I use M Technique, so Marinos makes them in Italy, and they're guaranteed for life. If you break them, he'll give you a new pair because you won't break them. You break the tips off, maybe, if somebody drops them or stands on them, but the body of them, they won't break. Now, the reason that is because he makes carbon fibre parts for cars and boats and whatever. So he makes carbon fibre. That's what he does. So he picks the right fibres, the right compressions, the right patterns. That's what he does. And if it breaks at that angle, it will just never break at that angle. That is the strongest thing known to man. It's like it's super thick, super strong. So the question I'd have to ask you is, why is it broken there? So yes, you possibly get it fixed, but if there's a fault in there that's made it break, then even if you get somebody to really repair it well, it's still going to break there because there's still a fault there. If they are slightly cheaper fins made by somebody who doesn't know carbon fibre, and there's a lot of fins out there that are made of carbon fibre. but they're not very good quality carbon fibre. That, you can tell if they're only machined on one side, so they're rough on the back side. That means they've only been pressed on one side. That's a good test to see if they're actually good quality carbon. The actual materials they're making, whether they know what they're doing. If it's rough on the underside, it means they've only pressed on one side. It's a little bit cheaper, a lot easier. So you tend to find quite a lot of the cheaper fins like that. If they're cheap, it's not worth fixing. If they're expensive, then there's a problem and they shouldn't have broken. So, drilling carbon fibre is quite an art. Many people say you shouldn't drill a carbon fibre at all because of the way that the stresses are then created around it. And so if it's a screwed in, then how was it screwed in? Was it drilled correctly? I mean, I don't know how to drill carbon fibre. It's not my kind of machinist skill. So were they drilled correctly? Were they finished correctly before the screws were put in, etc., etc.? And if there's a crack there, then possibly it wasn't, or there was a fault. So that's it's not an easy question. It's not an easy question. So sorry, I can't give you a definitive answer. At the angle, by the way, that's the thickest part of the fin, and it's the thickest part because it takes the most stress. All the power goes through that kind of the foot pocket, and at that angle, you're creating stresses there. And Guidon, for instance, who used to make the beautiful composite fins that you see Aura still wearing, so kind of blue, see-through blue with strips of carbon around the side. He said he'd never make a fin with a bend in it because the stresses are way too much on that. Okay, so sorry I can't answer you definitively, but that's it. Okay, so it says, how do you set up your rope at deeper end with a tennis ball and a plate? Also a light at the end. How do I set up my rope? Well, I spend hours setting up my rope. So literally, I have however many ropes. I've got 6 ropes, all for different reasons, for different depths, for different uses. Some are useful for sled, some are for competition training, some are just like the rope I'll take to Freefest this week. It's just a general rope. That's it. So I personally use disc weights, so weightlifting weights, old ones that you can still get steel ones, and I'll put them this way. Okay, I won't hang them vertically because the point of the weight at the bottom of your rope is to keep it down. Okay, so if you put it flat like this, and I use a figure of 9 knot underneath, and then a stopper knot. See the knots tutorial if you want to know a figure of 9. So I put it this way because when you pull on it, it creates a resistance. Now people put it this way because they say, well, it's easier to pull up because there's no resistance. But the whole point is that you want the rope to hang straight. So if you're pulling down a rope, you want resistance. So it's counterintuitive to put it this way. Then you have to put more weight on. So if you put it this way, you don't need as much weight. You can pull against it, and it creates a little bit of resistance, and so you can take off 2 kilos. Anyway, so I put a weight this way with a figure of 9 underneath to stop it going through. Rope goes up, then a tennis ball, and I spend quite a lot of time making my tennis balls. I will make tennis balls need. Make sure the hole's neat, because if there's a little crack on them, the whole tennis ball can start cracking. So it's a perfect round hole with no nicks in it, just big enough for the rope to go through. Put the tennis ball on, measure your meter from your plate, which I get from Freedive World. It's Ukraine somewhere. They do really nice bottom weights with a screw fitting on them, and they fit all rope sizes from I don't know, 6 mil up to 12 mil if you ever have a 12 mil rope, but 10 mil standard rope, it fits on lovely, and you just slide it on and screw it up and it fits up tight. So that's your 0. Usually have the weight maybe a meter below. So the tennis ball is a meter above the flat bottom plate. Bottom plate is a meter above your weights. The idea being, if you've got a lanyard, a decent lanyard, it'll be a meter long. So that gets stopped by the tennis ball. Where's this hand? This gets stopped by the tennis ball. So lanyard is a meter long, gets stopped by the tennis ball. This hand and my face is by the plate. There's no way my face is going to hit the bottom weights, which are 2 meters away. So meter, there's the bottom plate with the tags or whatever you want, and my head's not going to hit the weights. That's if I miss my grab. So yeah, tennis ball, tiny hole in the top, slightly bigger hole underneath, and then I tie a loose double granny knot, or you could use a figure of 9, but no, you couldn't really. So loose, and like squeeze it into the tennis ball, and then pull it tight while it's inside the tennis ball. So there's no way that can come out. Okay. And the important thing is that the hole on the top is small, because that's what you want to stop the carabiner coming down. The ball moving up it's not going to happen. It's never going to happen. So it's to stop the thing coming down, and we do it quite well. We do it well enough that we can put a decent sled on it, and the tennis ball still stops it. So yeah, that's how I do it. And then monkey the line up to the top, and then at the top, and this is super important, you get yourself an octopus, whatever they call them, line changer. This is a game changer when you're using ropes. Yeah, it's based on a climbing ascender. Lets the rope go through one way. Beautiful bit of kit. Buy one. Don't go for a cheap copy. Get the original. Hopefully that answers your question. And do you put a light at the end? Yes and no. If you're diving deep enough that you need a light, then yes. If you're diving where there's bad visibility, then a light not necessarily, because a light in bad visibility will just light up the rubbish in the water around it. So when you get there, your eyes have got to adjust to the dark. A kind of glow can kind of disorientate, or you'd rather get your eyes kind of brightness, but you can't see which direction it is, okay? Because it's just if you're in a dark scenario, like for instance Dorothea, where there's layers of stuff at the top, algae bloom, shallow, when you go down, it's a slate quarry in North Wales, it's crystal clear. So torches then like beam for ages. So if it's dark, then I would put a light on there. If it's just bad viz, probably not. Maybe a glow stick, just for kind of, I don't know, really something that you can see. We've used them at a dive off, which is on second week of September, the dive off in Vobster. We've sometimes put glow sticks there, but they tend to fall off, and then I'm basically throwing plastic in the sea. So yeah. Okay, so hopefully that answers your question. Okay, so Nico, oh my living lord, it's 8 o'clock. So Nico, let's have a quick look at your question. If it's a long one, I'm going to use it as my first question for next week. How do you stay at constant depth when freediving without a floor or other features to use, without wasting too much energy flapping around? Thinking about photography, for example. Practice. And practice. So what we do in No Tanks, our warm-up will always be the same warm-up when we're in most deeper waters, not Raisbury where it's 10 meters and we're looking at boats and whatever. But if you're diving, the warm-up will always be the same. It will be 10 meters, and we call it the 10-meter warm-up. So obviously no computers. Don't do computers. A waste of time. We'll do a dive, and if it's a newbie, we'll say maximum 10 meters. If you're intermediate or senior, you know what we mean. And we don't even have to say it. It's just a warm-up. But it's the 10-meter warm-up. And the idea is you go down as slow as you can, no pause at the bottom, and then back up. And the whole point is gauging yourself. It's about building awareness on that day of yourself. Okay? So you're going down super slow and up super slow. If you get to the bottom and you've run, oh man, I've gone a bit too slow, and you come up too quick, that's fine. But you know you went too slow. Or if you get down and you come back up and you go, oh, that was way easy, you know you went too quick. So you've got this gauge. But the other thing you're gauging is how deep you go. So you come back up, and if your buddy goes, yeah, it was fairly shallow, 10 meters, you go, oh, okay, well, my gauge is off. You know, today, what I think is 10 meters is, you know, not quite 10 meters. Doesn't matter how far, but not quite. Or if you come back and your buddy goes, you disappeared. That was a very deep 10 meters. You go, whoa, I'm sorry. Because for safety reasons we have it 10 meters, but you're off again. So you're learning what 10 meters feels like. You're learning what happens at 10 meters. You're learning how buoyant you are at 10 meters. So after you've done a few sessions like this, a very few sessions, you start nailing that 10 meters. So when you're trying to hold position, you know, because you've just practiced it. And this is one of the things that we really think about at No Tanks, that if there's an opportunity to learn something, we try and learn something. You know, we don't just kind of only learn very specific things. We try and learn a lot of things as often as possible. And one of the things is this guide of 10 meters. And you know, your buddy as well, they might not really know what 10 meters is, so they're learning what it looks like for 10 meters. You know, they come back and go, that was a bit shallow, and then one of the seniors goes, yeah, it's about spot on. Oh, okay, sorry, it wasn't shallow, it was spot on. So they're learning as well. So they're learning to look at the visibility as well. So, but you can tell by light, you can tell by how you're sinking. You can always just let a little bubble out and see if it's floating up, and if it stays like where it is, then you're floating up. If it goes up quick, you know, you're sinking. You know, there's ways like that, but most of the time it's just you're feeling it. Obviously, if you're sinking, you have to equalize. If you're floating, it's going to get brighter. So you just practice and practice and practice and practice and practice. So it looks good for us to get back in the pools. So that's it. Hopefully that answers your question. Just that's it. The time's up. We've run out of time. So it looks good for us to be getting back in the pools, possibly in August. I'm really going to push for September as the opening date for all the clubs. So stay posted. And well, hopefully we'll see you in Free Fest. If not, Wednesday we've got another dry session in the park. Welcome to join us. Please come and join us. It'll be fantastic. We technically it's a No Tank session, so we can have up to 30 people there. So come down, Kingston Gate, Richmond Park, 7:30 on Wednesday. We'll have a blast, and and we'll see you then. If not, I should do something for Friday. I don't know how I'm going to do it because I'm going to be on my way to Cornwall. Thank you. Bye.